So this is just going to be the agenda for today. I'm just going to introduce myself, ask you guys to introduce yourselves, find out who's in the audience, who's here, what your guys' needs are for. Then we're going to go over some research highlights for each of these different techniques, the attune, emotion coaching, and ACT. I'm going to try to have enough time for role-playing because that's very important when it comes to emotion coaching, is to learn how to do it with other people before you try it on your kids or your clients. And then obviously we're going to have some time with questions and answers. So let me introduce who I am. Obviously I'm a husband, I'm a father. I have 4 children. One was recently diagnosed on the spectrum. He's also got ADHD. The other one is a little bit ODD-ish. That's our daughter. We've been told by multiple people that she exhibits those behaviors. And then our 2-year-old is just a neurotypical kid who's just a 2-year-old. So I'm a therapist. I specialize in working with kids with ASD, ADHD, and ODD. I also do a lot of family therapy when I do the work with those kids, because family therapy is very important when it comes to ODD kids, as well as ADHD and ASD. And also I'm a researcher and a student, so I try to make sure that I stay up on the research. I'm looking at the journal articles, most recent articles that come out, just so that I can make sure to understand if any of these techniques are changing and how to apply those changes to my clients. So let me find out who you guys are. Do we have parents in here? Awesome. Therapists? Okay. What about teachers? Okay. So what brings you guys here today? There we go. So what brings you here?
A 9-year-old we're trying to figure out.
Okay, 9-year-old. CEUs. Perfect. Okay. Any other thoughts about what brings you here? Go ahead.
I'm starting an internship.
Okay.
My master's degree, and I'm district, so I just thought this might be helpful.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Awesome. Okay. I work a lot with the schools. Actually, 2 months ago, I did 2 presentations for a school district in our where we live. And a lot of this was covering emotion coaching and how to deal with ODD kids, so that's awesome. Any other thoughts about what brings you guys here? What are you hoping to find out? Because I want to make sure that I change the presentation according to the audience, just to make sure everybody gets what they need when they come here. Go ahead.
I feel like so I can apply these things to my clients and know how to help parents and working with kids.
Okay. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Being a better parent, using the resources so that we can help him, because we're not doing it. We need help.
Okay. Okay. Tell me a little bit about your 9-year-old. What some of the behaviors that you're concerned about?
I don't know if there's a bipolarism going there. We have
Okay.
Like we had family pictures the other night. I'm like, smile, Josh, and he went into complete tantrum with screaming how it was everybody's fault that he was smiling. It's
Right.
his sister's fault. The tantrum's on the ground and screaming.
Okay.
It's ours.
Okay.
We're trying to take family pictures.
Okay.
There's no calming him down. That little sign.
Gotcha. Okay.
He's got older sisters that are in their 20s.
Uh-huh.
And then there was this little thought that's a 9-year-old. So
Gotcha.
there's a dynamic there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Very interesting. Okay. Any other specific needs that you guys have? Go ahead.
I'm a homeschool mom of a 12-year-old, and I'm just always looking for different ideas to
Okay.
help in that situation.
Okay. Great. So let me ask you guys this. Who has heard of emotion coaching or John Gottman? Okay. What do you guys know about emotion coaching? So you've heard of John Gottman. What about emotion coaching? Nobody. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of the same thing that I discovered when I moved to Washington. Is John Gottman, obviously he's stationed out of the Seattle, out of the University of Seattle, or University of Washington in Seattle. But a lot of his stuff on kids and emotion coaching hasn't been very well disseminated. Okay, so a lot of people don't know about emotion coaching, and that is actually a really big problem because it's very helpful. So if you don't know about emotion coaching, what I'm going to do is go through the attune aspect of emotion coaching, because the very first step of emotion coaching is understanding your own emotions, and if you don't understand your own emotions, then you can't emotion coach somebody else. But Daniel Siegel is a psychiatrist who talks about mindfulness and how to attune to other people. And that I thought fit really, really well with emotion coaching and that first step. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. So later on in the presentation, I'm going to need 4 volunteers. So I'm not going to ask for those volunteers right now. I just want you guys to think about it. So that way, if you want to volunteer, when I get to that point, please just come up and we'll get started on that. Now, again, this all depends on how fast the presentation goes or if I have enough time for it. I have a long version of role-playing and a short version of role-playing. So if you're lucky, you won't have to do the long version, and we'll just do the short version. But in case, please think about whether you're willing to volunteer. Okay, so attunement. Some research highlights. Emotional attunement is the mechanism by which trust builds in the family. Okay? It also erodes in the family when attunement is not present. So what are your thoughts about that first? When you hear that, you hear that attunement is necessary for the building of trust. What comes to mind? Go ahead.
Well, when attunement is achieved, that you have that you get me moment, right?
Yes. What do you mean by that?
Just where you connect with someone and it becomes an empathetic or empathic shared experience.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you for saying that. Okay. How does that build trust? Go ahead.
I had a companion on my mission who I just really did not feel like she attuned with me at all.
Uh-huh.
And I had such a hard time understanding where she was coming from. I didn't really trust her point of view because I felt like she didn't understand my point of view.
Right.
So we just couldn't communicate.
Good. Very good. Okay. So as you might expect, attunement is necessary for the building of trust and for emotion coaching to work. Because if your kid doesn't trust you, they're not going to trust your perspective of their emotions. So keep that in mind as we go throughout this process. There is some evidence that the level of trust in families actually is correlated and connected to medical diagnoses 35 years down the road. Okay? So I can't go into much of the details about this research. This was just highlighted in Gottman's book, The Science of Trust. But he basically said that 91% of college-age students who reported a non-warm, non-welcoming environment in their home had serious medical issues 35 years later. And those 100% who reported a warm relationship in the home did not. So it's pretty serious. It's also kind of speaks to Gottman's thought about contempt being the corroder of trust and the corroder of relationships. And in fact, he's got a lot of research that shows that contempt from one person to another causes immune problems in the receiver of that contempt. So again, contempt is the opposite of attunement. If you're feeling contempt or an intense disgust of another person, that's not going to build very much trust. Emotional attunement promotes regulation within the person who is attuning as well as the person who's being attuned. So if you want to promote emotion regulation, you have to attune to others, but also be attuned to yourself. And we'll talk about how that works in a minute. And like somebody said back there, attunement is the experience of feeling felt. So let's talk about that. What does it mean to feel felt?
Along the same lines of like being heard,
Yeah,
being validated.
right. Okay. How does that promote self-regulation, do you think? If you're feeling felt by somebody, how does that promote self-regulation?
Well, you can let go of the struggle of being heard, right?
Yes. Perfect. Very good. Okay. Any other thoughts about these research highlights? Okay. So the reason I'm going to talk about research highlights in all of these different methods is because I have to sell this to parents a lot when I do the clinical work. And I know that this stuff works, but sometimes when I'm telling them to do something that is completely contrary to the way they were taught, completely contrary to the way that their instinct tells them to do, they have to have some knowledge that this is actually going to work. So again, we'll get into what that looks like in a minute. Okay, so ATTUNE is a really good acronym. John Gottman and Daniel Siegel are very good at coming up with acronyms that make sense. So ATTUNE actually comes out of Gottman's book, and Siegel's book talks about faces, which is similar to ATTUNE, but I like the word or the language of attune better. So awareness of the emotion is the first thing that you need to be aware of or have in order to attune. And then turning toward the emotion. So this is, again, counter to what we're used to. What does it mean to turn toward the emotion? Go ahead.
Actually feel it instead of avoid.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
I feel like asking questions to better understand their emotion,
Okay.
digging deeper into it.
Okay. So let's say you've got a child who's throwing a tantrum. How do you tune toward or turn toward their emotion? How do you turn toward their tantrum? Go ahead.
Sit in there with them instead of run away.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And help them get that feeling of being felt, right? Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and some of the difficulties of doing that for ourselves and for others. And then also tolerate the emotional experience. This is hard for a lot of adults. It's hard for a lot of kids. It's hard for a lot of therapists, especially to tolerate somebody's emotional experience. So that's necessary for attunement. And then understanding the emotion. Obviously, we need to get an understanding of what's going on for that person, help them communicate to us what is going on inside their body, what's going on inside their mind, and then a non-defensive listening to that emotion. Why is that necessary for attunement? Go ahead.
Because when you're defensive, you're still putting blame upon the person who's having that emotion.
Okay.
When you're being defensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no way they can feel safe
Right.
with you if they feel that you're blaming them.
Right. Right. Good. Good.
If you're defensive, it's about you.
Uh-huh.
And when you're attuning, you're supposed to be focused on their emotions. And so it really
Right.
has to not be about you at that point.
Exactly. Exactly. What about empathy toward the emotion? That's the last step. That's where emotion coaching comes in. But empathy towards the emotion, what do you guys think about that? Go ahead.
Sometimes when I'm dealing with my own kids, I kind of try to put myself back when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
I'm not feeling where they were at, put yourself in their shoes. And like,
Right.
I have to feel what they felt. Maybe this breakup with a boy is not the most important thing, but at that time in their life, it is.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So this is a quote from Gottman's book, The Science of Trust. He talks about how an individual does not direct all of our own functioning. We co-regulate, and that's important to understand. I'm going to show a video in a minute, and I want you guys to kind of feel how this feels to be co-regulated. So this video, I've had a lot of people tell me that it's hard for them to watch. It's not anything traumatic, but it's hard for them to watch because of this very fact. You're trying to co-regulate and you can't. So think about that. Okay. So this is called the still face experiment. Probably some of you guys have already seen this. But as you're watching this, I want you to, hopefully the sound will come through, pay attention to your body and your emotions as you watch the video. Figure out whether you're being co-regulated and why is this experiment important in understanding attunement and emotion coaching. Oh. Okay, so it's not coming through.
Are extremely responsive.
Thank you. All right.
To
Sorry about that.
emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I would like a pair. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions. They turn away. They feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, you're so little girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Okay. So how did that feel, watching that video? How did you feel emotionally or in your body as you watched that video?
I was very uncomfortable when the mother was just staring at the baby and the baby was not doing well.
Yeah? What made you uncomfortable with that?
I just thought that poor child.
Right.
Isn't old enough to process it all, but
Uh-huh.
something wasn't right. And was
Yeah.
just reacting negatively.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
When she turned her face toward the end and started like earnestly crying, like I felt the physical response to cry with her.
Right. Okay. Good. So that's what feeling co-regulation is. And why is that important to understand? Why do we need to know that we can be co-regulated? Go ahead.
That with kids, it's good to know that we can help co-regulate them, but I
Mhm.
think also the part that you said at the beginning, I think it's important to be aware of how we're feeling because it's going to co-regulate other people,
Yes.
especially kids if they're picking up on.
Right. Yes. Go ahead.
I think also I have a few daughters with anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a very helpful piece to realize that when they come at me with their anxiety, I start feeling anxious.
Yes.
Right? And that I need to realize that that's not my anxiety, that's
Yes.
their anxiety.
Right. Yes. And that's probably the hardest part of the emotion coaching technique is understanding that we're being co-regulated, that we can co-regulate, but also not be overtaken by the other person's emotions. So again, that's why I want to focus on attunement and the research behind attunement and why attunement is necessary for even emotion coaching to take place. Okay, so I'm going to show a few pictures of kids up here. And again, this is to look at your attunement. What are you feeling? What are they feeling? What's going on for them? So just call out emotions. What do you think they're feeling? Frustration? Okay. Okay. What about this one? What's that? Pain? Okay. Yes. Awesome. You picked that up. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So we need to, I'm going to talk about micro expressions of emotions. These are really big emotions that are pretty easy to see. But emotion coaching works really well if you can attend to the micro expressions and catch them before they become explosive. So, okay, so there's going to be another video here. Now, this is where Daniel Siegel talks about attunement and how to feel felt and be felt by others. So how does this compare to your previous perception of taming a negative behavior? Okay, so keep that in mind as you watch the video. And then figure out an experience that you have felt. Because if you can tune back to that, then it'll help you understand that you want your children or your clients or whoever you're doing this with to feel and experience that same thing. So before we get started, I want to ask, what tames negative behavior? From your perspective, from your understanding, what works to tame negative behavior? Go ahead.
What we've been talking about is attunement.
Attunement, okay.
A lot of times bad behavior will come and you want to ignore it just because it can be overwhelming. But
Right.
my children, I've noticed that if I lean into it
Uh-huh.
and get on their level and figure out what's going on, it really calms everything down.
Okay, good. Any other, go ahead.
Okay, finding an alternative soothing strategy.
Okay, so finding an alternative. Okay, any others? Go ahead.
Just not getting emotionally involved. You have to take kind of the emotion out of it in the sense of like, not getting caught up into what they're feeling and feeling the same way. If they're yelling at you, you're not yelling back at them. That doesn't
Uh-huh.
feel anymore. So,
Okay, good. Very good. Okay, any non-therapists have a good answer? Go ahead.
That's what I thought before I learned a lot of stuff. I definitely grew up with a family where it's like negative behavior was ignored. And,
Yes.
And much of negative behavior, where we're going to label that, was
Right.
often just crying for connection.
Uh-huh.
But it was much like, ignore it, they'll stop it.
Right. Perfect. Ignore it or punish it, right? Okay, so this is what, I use this same kind of scenario when I talk with schools and parents, and that's typically what they say is the best thing to do for negative behavior, is either ignore it or punish it. Get it taken care of, get the negative behavior completely away from your situation so you don't get co-regulated negatively. So let me have Dr. Siegel talk about what attunement is.
Solving problems is great, but not when it's done exclusively of just being with someone's inner subjective experience. And this is the key point you're raising. And this is really getting into the right-left brain stuff. The right brain really likes to just be with what is, and that attunement between two people is one of the most important experiences of joining any of us can have ever. So you can say you're not doing anything, but actually you're doing something by just being together. Right? And that is something a lot of people miss because they feel so anxious inside. They want to solve a problem. They don't realize the fundamental connection that needs to be set up is not about looking for ways of solving a problem. It's just about being with a reality. Now, what does that mean on a deep, deep level? And this is a right hemisphere, left hemisphere example. If I don't take the time to align myself with your right hemisphere, all I'm going to do is do what the entire rest of the world does, which is the left brain is always looking outward. So, for example, this is going to get a little complicated with anatomy, but for a baby searches the world with the right hand, which goes straight to the left brain. But the baby soothes herself with the left hand, which is going right to the right brain. So the way that, if you want to just get a gist of the differences, besides the idea that the left is looking at the text and the right is looking at the context, and the left is like the letter of the law, whereas the right is the spirit of the law. The right hemisphere is really about interiority. It really looks at the interior of the self and the interior of other people. It looks for the subjective side of the mind is a right brain dominant thing. The left is really all about looking outward, solving problems, sending language out, figuring out what am I supposed to display to the outside world. There are things called social display rules. What am I supposed to really do to be accepted by other people? That's all left brain stuff. So in these ways, parents are so busy managing their children's doings and calendars and everything like that, that they miss this opportunity for being with their child. And it's very, very sad. The thing I'm really concerned about is when you add busy parenting that are focused on doing and calendars and managing behavior, where they're not actually being with the mind of the child. Then you launch kids into schools which are unbelievably pressured to get kids ready for this incredibly competitive, me, do better, 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 better. Then they're on the internet, which is constantly an externally focused set of stimuli. We're raising a generation that actually isn't developing the skills of looking inward, which is where kindness comes from. And it's where resilience comes from. It's where the permission to know there's a vulnerable part of myself that has a longing that's not met, like you just told me there. The way we really allow that vulnerability to be present, so for kindness to be there, is to actually be able to look inward at ourselves and look inward at others. So at a very, very basic level, this is how we see the mind. I call mind sight. And there's a way of living where you don't see the mind, and there's a way of living where you do. And everything in modern culture is pushing us to not look at the mind.
But you're offering such a simple solution, it doesn't cost any money.
Zero.
And for all kinds of reasons that you just described, we're not doing it. The cultural pressure is not to sit quietly and draw with each other and look into each other's faces. And
Right.
yet in that scenario that you talked about where the child is upset and you attend to the right side of the brain by touching them, connecting with them emotionally. And then at some point you're able, shortly after that, to start to problem solve. Is that because something's actually happening in their brain?
Sure. Let me give you an example. Should we go back to the example where you feel rejected?
Sure.
So there are studies that everybody should know about that I summarize with the phrase, name it to tame it. So if you're really agitated, you're frightened of being rejected again, or you're really upset with what happened, or you're angry or whatever, in Maria's right brain, I can tell you this, in addition to right and left, there's, now please excuse these incredibly simplistic statements, but there's an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. Now I'm fine with that for this parenting book, but believe me, my other foot is in science, and the scientists would see that and go, what? But the fact is, there's a cortical rim where a lot of this higher stuff goes on, and there's everything below the cortex. So if you take your thumb and put it in the middle of your fingers and put your hands over the top, give this a try. This would be in my brain like this, see? And so this would be the cortex where you do all your thinking and planning and all that kind of stuff. If you lift up your cortex, you have everything below the cortex, which we call the downstairs brain. That's reasonable. Downstairs is just a substitute for the word subcortical, which freaks parents out. So downstairs. And it's the upstairs brain is the cortex. Okay? So you lift up your upstairs brain, you go to your downstairs brain, that's the subcortex. It's the limbic area, and it's the brainstem. These are very ancient circuits, responsible for things like emotion and motivation and fight, flight, freeze reaction, and your arousal states whether you're awake or asleep, stuff like that. So what happens at that moment is, if we did a scan on your brain, we would say that your right amygdala, your limbic area, and your downstairs brain, the downstairs brain is super active. I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And studies show that if you have this kind of presence of mind, I can get Maria's left brain to name the feeling from the downstairs brain. And you can show that she will squirt soothing neurotransmitters down to her right limbic area, right downstairs brain, and calm it down. Okay, so we quickly summarize that entire set of studies with name it to tame it. I mean, so that's all parents need to know. In the book we didn't put any of this stuff, but everything is backed up by science, believe me.
So what does that look like? I come to you, I have a problem.
So here's what it looks like. So let's say you're agitated about being rejected by your friends. So I give you the hug. All I'm doing at that moment, not naming anything. You don't jump to that. First it's connect, and then redirect. So that's we have these strategies, connect and redirect. So the idea is, first I connect with my right hemisphere. That helps soothe your whole system, but you're still nervous about going back to school. So then I say, well, let's talk about it. And you say, well, this happened, and she was there, and she was going to go to the party, but she didn't want to go, and then they turned away from me. They wouldn't have lunch with me. And I said, it sounds like you're really feeling a big feeling of fear that when you go to school tomorrow, no one's going to want to have lunch. So we're naming fear.
And I thought I was angry.
And maybe you were angry too.
But it helps to have the fear.
Right, but you have to actually name the accurate emotion. Right? Because we could say, well, you're feeling excited to go for popsicles, but that's wrong. Right? So it's not just naming anything.
And when you name it, it registers as true. That's what I'm getting at, is sometimes we think we're angry, but in fact we're sad or we're fearful. So by you saying fear, it might in fact
that would calm your downstairs brain.
Yeah.
Right. So at that moment, then we're using, first connecting with the right hemisphere, helps the system get stabilized, you don't feel alone. The next step is to name entertainment. So I'm going to now help you with my left brain, because I'm going to use both my hemispheres together and go, gosh, I wonder what my daughter's really feeling here. And I'm not going to tell you what you're feeling, but I would say something like, I wonder if you're feeling scared. And then in Maria's brain, the whole system calms down.
Okay. So, what were your thoughts about that? And how does that contradict the normal process of ignoring and punishing? Is that the first time you guys have seen this video? Probably. Oh, okay, good. It's on YouTube. That's another thing I forgot to mention. In the handouts, instead of just video, I put the link to all of these videos on YouTube, so you can watch them if you want to, but just so that you're aware of that. So what are your thoughts? Being versus doing. How is that helpful to know? Go ahead.
Well, doing is very left brain. And so if you're using your right brain to be with your child or whoever it is, you're modeling that to that other person as well.
Right.
They attune to your left brain.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Go ahead.
I love brain brain. Other people might even know, but she talks about playing because I have a really hard time playing with my kids. And I always felt like, Mom, I hate playing cars or whatever. And I realized that pretty time helped me do this, that being there or doing that with my kids wasn't as good as me just being in the room. So maybe I'm not doing everything he's doing because I'm not good at that, or that's not my language of play. But being there is good. But if I'm just pretending to do and counting down the minutes that I'm going to be done for 20 minutes, then that's not going to be helpful.
Right.
But if I'm just being there and just letting him play, and even if I'm not in on it, just sitting in the room is good. And
Yeah.
that's more important.
Awesome. I like that. Go ahead.
The thing that resonated with me the most is when he says, the first you connect and you let them know they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what really resonated because at least my own personal fears and anxieties, almost all of them center on isolation.
Right.
Like fear of isolation, I'm feeling isolated,
Mm-hmm.
something bad is going
Yeah.
on my own. And so that really resonated for me.
Yeah, and that goes to the attunement piece, and that goes also to the very first step of emotion coaching, is recognizing that there's an emotion going on and you need to do something to help. So, go ahead.
I was just going to add, and the next step after the connection, I love that it's enough to name the feeling. You don't have to fix it, you don't have to
Right.
talk it all through a bunch, but it just goes really far, just getting them to connect with that feeling.
Yes, yes. So I want to talk about that being versus doing piece. I have a client who is selectively mute, will only talk to mom, and has a lot of trauma experience. And so I do what's called non-directive play therapy, which means I'm not supposed to tell the child to do anything. The child is supposed to direct the interactions. I've met with this child now for 25 sessions, and he has not spoken one word to me. But just being in the room with him, doing what we do, just being present, he has increased his vocalizations at school. He's raised his hand, answered questions at school. He's talking to neighbors and friends, but he won't talk to me. Now, I know why that is. There's a lot of stuff going on around his family, but there's a very specific reason he won't talk to me. And then just recently, just 2 weeks ago, I told him, okay, so it looks like things are going well, so I want you to tell your mom whether or not you want to come back once a month, once every 2 weeks, or once a week. And within 10 minutes of leaving the office, she emailed me and said, he wants to come back every week. I said, okay, it's up to him. He's getting something out of it that I can't articulate, that I don't know what's going on. I'm being with him instead of doing something that he or mom or other people say, this is therapy. So I'm being there, and I'm being a calming presence for him. So whatever I'm doing and being there is helping him outside of my room, and that's all that matters to me. So, and then that can also translate to all of your clients, your kids, your experiences with whatever brings you here today. Okay, so I want to talk about attunement because it also leads to what's called interpersonal integration. And I'm going to show a video at the very end of the presentation that talks about what integration means and what differentiation means. So it's important to be differentiated and integrated. And so in order to be integrated, this is what it means. Integration within relationships means that each person honors personal differences and cultivates compassionate connections in the form of a caring, respectful communication. In essence, I do not force you to be similar to me, but I respect how we are different from each other, and I'm interested in who you actually are. So that's integration. That's kind of, when I was in my master's program, I really glommed on to Murray Bowen and differentiation, and this is what I thought differentiation meant. So a lot of people have their own views of what differentiation is. This is what I think it means. And so I love that Daniel Siegel talks about differentiation and integration together, because he says to be differentiated without integration is bad, and that's kind of the far end of the differentiation spectrum. But so this really resonates with me. And you said something about Brené Brown. She talks about this a lot, right? Can you tell us how this connects to Brené Brown?
Just sitting here thinking, this sounds so much
I mean, so a lot of her videos, a lot of her books, they talk about being able to allow other people to be and honoring yourself. So a lot of times when I deal with teenage clients, I might have parents who are trying to get them to be a pseudo-self, where they're getting them to go out and play basketball even though the kid doesn't want to play basketball. So we need to be able to communicate to our clients, to parents, to our children, to teachers, that we respect them for who they are, and that they're just being them is okay. And so that's where the being versus doing comes in. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. And that can be hard. It's very difficult to do if you're not comfortable with who you are. So, go ahead.
So the child says, the way I want to be is not do any chores.
Mm-hmm.
So can't you just love me and let me be who I am?
Well, so, I mean, that's a good question, but that's a behavioral issue, not an emotional issue. So, I mean, this is all emotional. This is talking about the emotional presence of who they are. So, you want to, so I'll give you an example a little bit later about what I mean by this, because it'll make a lot more sense. So, okay, thanks. Okay, so here's emotion coaching. This increases the vagal tone. Anybody know about vagal tone or the vagus nerve? Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
That's just really interesting that it increases things like that. It's really tricky complicated.
Right.
Like basically it's the main nerve that touches all of the important organs in the body.
Right.
And if it goes out of whack, really bad things happen, like you pass out or
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is Gottman calls it the 10th cranial nerve. I'm sure that's what it is in the literature, but I haven't gotten into that. So yes, it's the last nerve that goes throughout our entire body. And it controls a lot of our automatic functioning. The important piece of that is the vagal tone also controls self-regulation. So emotion coaching has been shown through, what's it called, randomized controlled trials, to increase vagal tone. So it's a neurological change that takes place from a behavioral intervention. So that's important to know. It decreases whining and discipline issues. So the discipline issues that can take place through behaviorally disturbed kids, if you emotion coach appropriately, then it will decrease those behavioral issues as well as the instances of their whining. He also found that only one emotion coaching parent is necessary, especially if it's a divorce. So emotion coaching buffers the negative effects of divorce as well as marital conflict if one parent is doing it. Okay? It also acts as a protective factor for children who are diagnosed with ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, when mothers emotion coach. So there hasn't been much research on fathers doing emotion coaching, but I suspect that that's the same. And then emotion coaching kids with an autism spectrum disorder has been shown to buffer some externalizing behavioral problems as well. That research is brand new. There's not been very many follow-ups on that article. In fact, I looked at all of the articles that cited this one, and none of them really talked about emotion coaching. But that's one thing that needs to be examined a little bit further. So I also want to talk about another one that just came out 2017, I think. I think it was just earlier this year. Over in England, they taught teachers how to emotion coach kids. And what they found was that it decreased expulsions, suspensions, and behavioral problems, especially in kids who were the problem kids. So for kids who just generally did well, it didn't really affect much. But those that were really off the charts and getting expelled all the time, it dropped, I think, by about 40%. Don't know because I couldn't find the article. But yeah, that's emotion coaching in schools is a very important factor, especially if we can decrease those suspensions and expulsions. So here are the steps of emotion coaching. The first one is to be aware of your own as well as your child's emotions. Again, that goes along with attunement. If you are aware of your own and your child's emotions, then it allows you to actually do the other steps of emotion coaching. The second one is recognize emotion as an opportunity, and that's hard. What's hard about that? Go ahead.
They usually have their fits when they're trying to get somewhere, like the doctor's office.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk about that too. Yes? Okay, so what else is hard about seeing it as an opportunity to connect or teach?
I mean, sometimes it can go well if you're able to be calm enough, but sometimes it can be difficult to see that as an opportunity because you're still stuck in your own feelings.
Right, right. Go ahead.
I think it would also depend on the child's development.
Okay,
If they're able to fully grasp the emotion and what's causing it,
okay,
versus just knowing that they're having this emotion,
okay,
would you be able to use that as a way to connect and teach the child as well?
okay. So I'll talk about that in a minute because I got a little bit of different opinion on that. So that's good, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay. And then you want to help verbally label the emotions. That's where the name it to tame it comes in. If you're recognizing it as an opportunity to teach or connect, you're doing what Daniel Siegel said is connect and then redirect. You're trying to understand what's going on. You're bringing them into your worldview. You're helping co-regulate them. And then you're verbally labeling that emotion. And then you communicate empathy and understanding. So communicating empathy and understanding is pretty difficult because a lot of people have a misconception about what empathy is. And if you're a therapist, this is a really big piece for teaching clients what empathy really is. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I also wanted to highlight, normally when I teach emotion coaching to therapists or even to parents, it takes about 4 hours to do because there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of role play to make sure that people are getting it right because it can be overwhelming. So this is just a brief overview of what emotion coaching is, some of the literature, as well as the steps. So also on the handouts on the website, there's a lot of resources that are available that you can get information about emotion coaching. The very last step is setting limits or problem solving. And Gottman says in some of his books that 95% of the time, all you have to do is the first 4 steps. And the kids' problem behaviors kind of solve themselves. But you also have to set limits every time. If they do a behavior that is inappropriate, you have to set a limit. And we'll get into setting limits at the latter half of the presentation. Okay, so this is about recognizing micro versus micro emotions versus big emotions. So what do you think she's feeling there? Okay, okay, good. So there's a lot of possibilities, right? What about there? Okay, so it's very important to understand what a micro expression of an emotion might be, because a very small turn down of a frown or eyebrow lift can say all the world to giving you the opportunity to connect. And then the other thing is knowing about your own emotions. How do you feel about feelings? So let's talk about that for a minute. Are you guys comfortable with feelings? Are feelings okay? And if not, which are not? Which feelings are not okay to express? Go ahead.
If you're not able to express your feelings, you stuff it.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to come back later.
Right, right. Okay, what about anger? Is anger okay? Yeah? Go ahead.
Especially in an LDS culture, there's certain moments where anger is not, like you can't express when you're angry at God. It's just like you shun for that, like, no.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just specific moments where emotions are not accepted.
Right. And that's important to know, is understanding your own perspective of emotions. Because I tell parents as well as children that all emotions are okay. He says all emotions are acceptable, not all behavior is acceptable. So we have to be able to come to terms with that in ourselves as well as for others.
I was going to say, it's always acceptable to experience an emotion, but how you express that emotion, some ways are acceptable and some ways are not. I mean, like anger is a great example for, in our household, you can say, I am really ticked off, and substitute whatever tick.
Sure.
You know, whatever word you want. That is completely acceptable. You can say that. You are not allowed to punch a wall.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Both express anger, but one is acceptable and one is not.
Right. Now, again, that's really important to clarify because that's where the setting limits comes in. And we'll talk about some of the cautions of emotion coaching a little bit later. But yeah, that's really important. So the next step is recognizing it as an opportunity to connect. Okay? So behaviors communicate needs. Response to behavior communicates priorities. So let's say there's an emotional cue. I call a lot of behaviors emotional cues. A kid slams the door. What are they feeling? What is their emotion? What's going on? That's where you use this as an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to teach. Because if they slam the door, you can go through the process of emotion coaching, which then increases emotional closeness with the child, and then set limits at the end. But if you set limits right away, what you're doing is telling that child that emotion they were feeling when they did that action is not okay to feel. And that leads to emotional distance. Okay, so any thoughts about this? This is the second step.
That's exactly what we do.
Okay. Right.
Criticize the behavior immediately and it goes nowhere.
Right. It's hard, and I'll talk about, because there's a lot of information about how long this actually takes to actually work, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Go ahead.
Just the video, the still face.
Yes.
You could see the unresponsive.
Uh-huh.
And you saw the child becoming emotionally distant and disconnected.
Right. Exactly.
Whereas when she was reacting and responsive to the emotion, happy, sad, whatever.
Yeah.
There was that emotional closeness. And you
Perfect.
could visually see in the video both
Yeah.
where those split.
That's great. I never thought about that. Thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead.
It was interesting to think about this in terms of attachment disorder.
Yes.
Because it's kind of backwards in
Uh-huh.
attachment disorder. The emotional cue is not trying to get closeness. It's trying to push you away because they're afraid. And so,
Right.
So you have to be really careful.
Yeah.
With that and look at, okay, 20 years from now,
Mhm.
really, it might take that long.
Mhm.
20 years from now, these parents might have children that love them and can connect back in. But if you jump right in there with, I'm going to attune with you, they're going to run the other way.
Right.
And throw some poo on the wall while they go. So
Right.
It's kind of different.
Yeah. And actually, I was talking with Roy earlier about a lot of ODD kids. I have a biofeedback machine that I take in with my kids. And a lot of ODD kids say that they're attuning when their heart rate is really high. And that's opposite of what it should be. So that hits on that a lot. So thank you for bringing that up. Go
I
ahead.
don't know where my 9-year-old got it, but lately he's been saying, treat me the way you want me to treat my kids.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
Like, who's he been talking to?
Right.
Too much insight.
Right. Okay, so the second step is recognize it as an opportunity. And obviously, every child is different. Every child is an individual. You have to figure this out based on each individual circumstance. But for an overall general population, this is kind of where it works. Okay, So this is what I was talking about. So emotion coaching step 3 is labeling the emotion, verbally labeling it, and you want to estimate the emotion, express the behavior. You're going to be wrong, and that's okay. So don't be afraid to be wrong or corrected. This right here is my daughter. We started emotion coaching her and her older brother when they were born, okay? And how you do that with infants is anytime they're fussing, you can say, oh, it looks like you're upset, it looks like you're sad, just like that. She corrects me all of the time. When I say she's crying, I say, oh, Abby, it looks like you're sad. No, I'm mad. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were mad. What are you mad about? So be okay with being corrected when children tell you that that's not what they're feeling, because you need to allow them to tell you what's going on internally. Giving them that language allows them to have that opportunity to learn those feeling words differently, okay? Any hands? I thought I saw a hand. Okay. Any thoughts about this?
So along with that,
Yeah.
saying, because I found this to be like being able to say sorry to your kids, or hey, I did that wrong, is so powerful.
Yes.
And so that's kind of along the same lines, is just being able to not to be afraid to be corrected.
Yes,
Like that.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, and then there was another hand back there. Yeah.
At what age do you think they can tell you how they are really feeling if they correct you? Like I have a 3-year-old and he kind of just knows happy or sad. So they're like, Mom, I'm sad.
Right.
Like I think you mean embarrassed.
Okay, so that's hard because I have an infant. He's about 2 years old, and he's starting to use feeling language. And just recently, he started to say, "I scared," and there's no reason he should be scared, but I want to honor his expression and say, "Oh, you're scared? Well, tell me what's going on. What are you afraid of? What's going on? Why are you scared? I want to help you." So it's. I just err on the side of safety and let them correct me. And then eventually, after you emotion coach them for long enough, they will, like just telling them or just me repeating to him that he's scared calms him down and allows me to get somewhere where we need to go. So it's hard. There's no hard and fast rule about when that is. Go ahead.
Like how you were saying, you start out when they're really young,
Mm-hmm.
and if you use a variety of words rather than
Yes.
sad, mad, then
Right.
they're going to learn a different variety of words.
Exactly.
They'll be able to say, oh, I'm disappointed, I'm sad.
Right. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other hands? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to bring up, is it important to do this as well when they're having good feelings?
Oh, yeah.
Label good feelings, like when they're excited, when they're...
Yes. And that's really important. That's important to keep in mind is you want to emotion coach all emotions so they know that all emotions are okay. So that's the other thing. Our son, 2-year-old, he always says, "I excited. I so excited." And so it's great to see that he can express that. So letting kids learn those feeling words, a broad spectrum of them, will help them communicate to you what's going on internally. So thank you. Okay, so step 4, empathy. So a lot of parents have a misunderstanding that empathy is agreement or that validation condones behavior. So empathy is not agreement and validation does not condone behavior, and you can communicate that effectively by just simply saying, "I can see that you're upset, and it really sucks that your sister hit you with the bat. I'm sorry that happened, but it's not okay for you to hit them back with whatever." So empathy is not agreeing that what is going on in their lives is you're okay with. So, and that's hard for a lot of parents because a lot of parents, as you'll see in the next video, have a hard time connecting to what kids are feeling because their feelings are disproportionate to the actual circumstance that is there. So, and then the next one is put yourself in the child's shoes. Try to truly understand what they're going through and what they're experiencing, just like this video.
Right in the park, we saw another family. They had like a 5-year-old boy holding a helium balloon. And he accidentally let go of his balloon. The boy started crying. And his parents were like, "Why are you crying? It's a balloon. We'll get you another one." I'm like, "Japers, folks." Sometimes I don't think adults try hard enough, to understand what kids are going through. If you wanted to relate to who's going through, imagine if you took your wallet out and it just started floating away. Why are you acting like that? It's a wallet. We'll get you another one. I want another one! Your boy's going through.
Okay. So that's where we get into empathy and validation, is we want the kids to feel felt, but if we don't really understand from their perspective what's going on, we're not going to be able to do that. So, any thoughts about that video or about empathy? Go ahead.
Just one step, not putting yourself in the child's shoes, but even more trying to understand what your child is experiencing in their shoes. It's so different.
Yes.
What my children are afraid of,
Yes.
or what creates big emotions in them may not be the same as me. It's very hard for me to understand, okay, this is very difficult for this child.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And thank you. That's really important, is understanding that this child is an individual. It's different from me, like the attunement piece. This person, we honor who you are. We honor that individual, and I'm going to let you be that way. So now, this may sound weird, but it goes to emotion coaching because it's part of emotions. I have a really hard time with my kids saying, I'm cold. And for me, I don't feel cold and say, no, you're not. You don't need a coat. That is emotional dismissing. So we need to recognize that they are experiencing their own emotions, their own feelings, their own experience, and we need to be able to attune to that. So yeah, that's another step. So the last step of setting limits, we're not going to go over, but I just want to go over some of the cautions of emotion coaching. It can take up to 6 months before you see any results. Now, this is really hard, and this is based on my own personal experience, but then I just recently listened to a video by Gottman, and he said the same thing. I was surprised. When I started doing emotion coaching with my firstborn, it was torture because he would scream in my face for half an hour to an hour long, and I thought, I know I'm doing this right, but nothing's working. After about 6 months of consistently doing this, it started working really fast. So it takes consistency, and even if you don't think it's working, keep doing it. And the hard part is you're doing something that's contrary to what a lot of people are used to, because, for instance, I help in the nursery with my wife, and a lot of kids get upset when their parents leave. And emotion coaching says, oh, you're sad that your mom left. Well, other people think you're just going to egg this kid on, keep the roller coaster going. But if you do it right, then that child will soothe in a few minutes. It won't happen for very long. But society says we need to distract and get this child not thinking about their mother so that way they stop crying. If you bring up mom, it's going to freak out. So we need to pay attention to that ourselves, especially when we're out at the grocery stores. It can take anywhere from 5 to 40 minutes to do properly, so you don't want to do this when you're in a rush. You want to do this when you have actual time to do it. And this goes to the very end part where Gottman talks about it only takes you 45 or 47% of the time to do it well. If you're doing emotion coaching 47% of the time, you're doing very well. So don't expect yourself to do this every single time your child feels an emotion, because that's not going to be realistic. You can't be a therapist 100% of the time. But if you can go through the emotions and label them briefly, and that's where ACT comes in, we'll talk about that in a sec, then you can start building up those relationships. So using emotion coaching as a relationship building tool is very important. Recognizing that that's what you're doing. You're not trying to correct behavior, you're trying to build a relationship. If you have that perspective, it helps you with all of your self-doubts that these people are thinking I'm a horrible person because I'm telling this child that their mother's gone. So, okay. So, and then also he found out that doing the first 4 steps without setting limits creates aggression in children. So setting limits is a very key aspect of emotion coaching, because a lot of kids will express their anger or their emotions in inappropriate ways, and they need to learn how to control that. So we need to make sure that we're actually setting limits. But if it's excited, then it's okay to jump up and down. So make sure that you're setting limits within appropriate boundaries.
But not if it's on the roof.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we do have some time for role plays. So do I have a few volunteers? All right, come on up. So I normally have chairs, but we can stand. So do you want to be the emotion? Oh, it's okay. Do you want to be the child or the emotion coach?
I'll be the child.
Okay. So think of a scenario, and I will try to use those first 4 steps to express or show how emotion coaching is going to do that.
Okay.
Don't tell me about the experience, or just when you're ready, just tell me you're ready. And
Okay.
ready? Oh.
I'm not sure exactly what I'm.
Just an emotional experience that you're familiar with the child in your life.
Okay. Complete with physical
Yeah.
action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what's your name?
My real name?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
My name is Katrina.
Katrina. Okay.
So I was
All right.
thinking of the child's name.
Right. Okay, so when you're ready.
I don't want to put on my clothes. No!
Katrina, it looks like you're upset. What's going on?
I just want you to help me. Won't you help me? I can't do it.
It looks like you're feeling helpless. Are you still upset?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, tell me what you're upset about.
I don't want to put on my clothes.
Are they uncomfortable for you?
No. I
No.
just want you to help me.
You want me to be with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can sit here next to you as you put your clothes on.
I want you to do it.
You want me to do it for you?
Do it.
Yeah, what is it about putting clothes on that is hard for you?
Hurts my head.
Oh.
It's off my shirt.
Okay. So your shirt is hurting when you put it on. Your head hurts when you put on your shirt.
Well, yeah.
Okay, what else?
I just want you to do it. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I can see that you're really upset right now. Looks like you're a little bit more calm.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Calmer.
Okay. All right, go ahead and stand up. So tell everybody what that felt like. What did that feel like as you were being emotion coached?
It felt a lot better than the way I handled it.
Okay. But what was different? Like, what did you notice from what did I do?
You didn't offer to do it
necessarily,
but you offered being there.
Okay.
And giving support.
Okay.
And acknowledging a deeper issue.
Right. Okay, good. So the other piece that I want people to attend to is I actually got on the ground with her. That's important, is staying close to the child, being with the child, showing that you're trying to actually be there. That's important. How did that feel as I got on the ground? Or did you even notice it?
I did notice it, actually. I think it, it just kind of leveled everything.
Okay.
It wasn't you being big and
Right.
me being small, or, that was, instantly a connection, just physically being smaller.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. So another thing I want to keep in mind, or tell you guys, is Daniel Siegel talks about the position is important. So you can't be standing over the child. In fact, you want to be at least slightly below their eye level in order to express the desire to connect. So a parent standing over a child like this, trying to emotion coach, doesn't go very well. But if you're down on the ground and you're right below their eye level and they're looking down at you, that helps them know that you really want to connect with them. Okay? So now, go ahead.
I just had a question about that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. So picking them up and just kind of holding them there at the moment, should you? Or
No, that's okay.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
good.
Whatever you feel comfortable doing with the child is perfectly fine. Yeah.
What if they're kicking and screaming and punching?
Yeah, so obviously you want to keep yourself safe. So if they're kicking and screaming, you want to make sure that you're going to be safe, they're going to be safe. Should you
Coach while they're in the full
meltdown?
meltdown, or do you want to
So what I typically do and tell my clients to do, and when I've got aggressive or violent kids in my room, is I will stay within a comfortable distance that I'm not getting hurt and they're not getting hurt, but I'll constantly reaffirm, okay, it looks like you're really mad right now. It looks like you're upset. I continually go through all of the upset, frustrated, angry words that I know to help them know that I'm trying to hear and see what they're going through. I had one kid that for 30 minutes would throw my chairs and the toys around, and I would just do that. And I've got video of it. I wasn't able to bring it because I couldn't get a hold of the parents, but I got video of when he first came in and when he left, and there's a big difference of his ability to know that I'm actually attuning to him. So, and you'll see me on my roller chair just rolling away and rolling towards and making sure that I'm safe and he's safe and telling him that I'm just going to be here. That's fine. So, yeah.
So it's important to remember that it might not happen right away.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the 5 to 40 minute.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes it could feel longer because you've got to co-regulate. You've got to regulate yourself. You've got to stay calm because the moment you start escalating, they'll start escalating. So you got to keep in mind of that. So what I want you guys to do is turn to each other, and I want you to take a moment to do some emotion coaching. Trade off. Be the parent and be the child. Okay? So I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to see how it's going, and then I will restart. All right. So I want to talk about a few things real quick that I forgot to hit on. And I know that a lot of you guys had some questions, so if you want to ask those questions right now, that's a good time. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. So with emotion coaching, the biggest piece to remember is it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to make mistakes. So Gottman talks about how that 47% of the time that you're doing emotion coaching, the other part of the time you should be failing. You should be not doing perfect with your kids because they need to learn that perfection is not expected. So it's okay to not be perfect. He talks about how he exploded at his kid when he was driving down because she forgot her coat. And so he yelled at her and called her a bunch of names like she was, I can't remember what it was. But at the end of the day, he came back and said, you know what, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I should have controlled myself. So those are the types of things that you need to do in coming back to the repair piece. So if it's okay to make mistakes, but always come back and repair. Just like Brazelton talked about in that video, come back for the repair because that's where it's all at, okay? Any other questions over here in the...
So what happens if you are reactive and you know you're not going to be able to calm down to meet their emotion? And
Sure.
you leave the room, are you ruining them forever?
No, not at all. Actually, that's probably a good thing, helping them to know that it's okay to repair, coming back and saying sorry. It's important to regulate yourself. If you can't do it, then don't do it. If you're too upset, then you can't be present with them and attune to them and give them what they need. So don't try to do that because you're going to ruin it anyway. So just minimize the damage.
You just tell them that you're going to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, say, I need to take a break, and then come back. Go ahead.
Mine's kind of on that same vein.
Sure.
Is it okay for you to name your own emotion?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
And say, this is what I'm feeling, but what are you feeling?
Yeah, it's really important to own your own emotions and name that. In fact, that's when you leave or when you're in a situation where you have to leave and you can't emotion coach in the present, then you can say, you know what, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I can't talk to you. I need to take a break. We'll come back and address this later. So those things are really important to show kids how to properly deal with conflict. Good.
And I think it's a good idea to get used to saying that when they're little, because for
Yes.
sure you're going to say that when they're adolescent.
Right. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. And that's important. Good.
Question, and what happens if they're a teenager and they just start shutting down and they don't want to even talk anymore about it?
Well, that goes to the attune piece. That's a lot of teenagers, and so I'll have teenagers that come in and they won't want to talk, and I'll just sit with them. I'll say, it's okay, we can just sit here, we'll play games. We don't have to talk, there's no big deal. So letting them know that they can be who they are, that you can be present with them, that you're not going to try and force them to be a certain way. Because a lot of teens will think that by emotion coaching you're trying to manipulate them in some way, and that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to fully connect with them. So if you can do that in a way that tells them that you're trying to connect, then that'll minimize those behaviors. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, watching the role play, I was thinking of my preteens not really talking. How does it look different if they can't respond back to, like, so what's going on for you? Are you still asking those questions to give that space?
Yeah.
Even if they're not?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I do because it allows them to know that I'm interested. And that I even do that with my mute client where he'll come in every single day and I know he's not going to talk, but I say, what do you want to do today? How was your day? And I give him about 3 or 4 minutes to respond, and then he'll get up and get what he wants to do, and then we'll go about our day. So, but he knows that if at any time he wants to talk, I'm ready to listen. So, yeah.
You know, I have, what an unusual thing, a selective mute.
Right.
You know, but I have one right now too.
Oh, okay.
And I do sandbox therapy with this girl.
Uh-huh.
And I've never heard
Yes.
her say one word.
Right.
And so I kind of made this up because there's not a whole lot
No.
in the literature
No.
about this. And so she's 12 and she'll sit there and she loves to build sandboxes. She's really good at that. So I know she wants to communicate.
Yes.
And so she builds these sandboxes and then I tell the story. I just
Right.
make it up.
Perfect.
I think this is what's happening. And then she grades me by moving a little marker thing that came up.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yes.
was I pretty close? Was I really off? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as time's gone on, she started saying, you're getting this right.
Right.
And her mother told me she went home and started doing sandboxes with her younger siblings, and she can't wait to come back. And
Yeah.
so it's like she's never said one thing to me.
Yeah.
But she feels heard.
Yeah.
And she's getting that communication going.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my first selective mute client, and I was just out of my element. But now I'm very comfortable with it because mom's on board now. She's seeing the progress. There's no worries about that. So yeah, that's probably my own anxiety coming out, is making sure that people know that I'm actually doing something that's helpful. So yeah. All right. So let's talk about, oh yeah, we don't want to do that. Okay. So let's talk about the ACT. So setting limits is really important in creating a safe space for kids as well as boundaries for adults. So ACT is a simple limit setting approach that Gary Landreth came up, and it's talked about in his parent-child relationship training book. This is sort of it's a filial play therapy training that parents can do and use that basically turns them into play therapists for their kids, and it's phenomenally awesome. I love it. Okay, and then so ACT limit setting minimizes saying no while giving the child space to be who they are and take responsibilities for their actions. So we'll talk about how that actually goes into play. And then limits are an important part of developing a safe environment for kids as well as a safe environment for adults. And generally, appropriate limit setting techniques increase self-regulation, they increase parenting confidence, as well as decrease aggressive child behaviors. So this is just in the literature, just about general limit setting techniques that people do. ACT, I think, is a great one that parents can use, and I use it with my clients all the time. I should probably be better with my kids. So this is essentially what it stands for. ACT is acknowledge the feeling or desire. So emotion coach, I can see that you're angry. Communicate the limit. So whatever behavior that they did is not appropriate. And then target an appropriate alternative. So this example is, I can see that you're angry and you want to throw the ball at my face. I'm not for hurting. You can throw the ball at the couch or the wall. So that communicates to them, instead of saying, no, you can't throw the ball at me, it says that you're hearing them, you're attuning to them, you're understanding what's going on for them, and you're giving them an appropriate alternative. So that is limit setting in a nutshell. And that's essentially the very last step of emotion coaching. So any thoughts or questions about limit setting or ACT? Go ahead.
How easy is it to get out that patience in time?
Well, that depends. So it takes a while to get used to saying that. That's why I said I should probably be better with my kids, because I do it all the time with my clients. But reframing your language to say, I'm not for hurting, and to say, I can see that you're angry and you want to throw that at my face, that takes some time for you to process. But if you're noticing that the child, that's where micro expressions come in. If you can pay attention to micro expressions, you can anticipate this. So one of my clients, my brand new client, was adopted, came into my office, was really aggressive, and pointed a gun and pointed it at mom. And I said, well, I can see that you want to shoot your mom, but mom's not for shooting, so you can shoot the wall or you can shoot the target. And that was it. He turned around and did appropriate behaviors. So, and after that, he didn't ever target mom again. He's an ODD kid and he's testing boundaries, trying to find out what he can do in my room, what's appropriate, what's not. And by giving him this limit, he now knows that that's not appropriate. And he hasn't tried again. So, so again, it takes a lot of cognition to remember, but if you do it and you can use it, it makes emotion coaching a lot easier and faster. So, any other questions or thoughts about that?
I like where it says what to do, because my kids, I often tell them, stop talking. But,
Uh-huh.
What do? Do they just freeze, not blink, not breathe? So you got to give them an idea to replace that thought of
Right.
freaking out play in their minds so they can use that energy for something. Because if you just leave it blank without telling them what to do,
Mm-hmm.
it won't help them reset their circuits.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. Okay, any other thoughts? Go ahead.
Ask them what another appropriate alternative would be.
No, you want to be the judge of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
don't allow them to
Right.
control that one.
Yep. Yeah, so because if you're giving the limit, you want to be the authority. So that way they know that you are in charge. And so you give that limit, you give the alternative, so that way they don't have to guess. Because for that one client, he probably would want to shoot me or dad or the window or something. But I just told him where to shoot and he shot. So, yeah.
But not saying you can think of another appropriate alternative.
Right, right, right. At least that's from my training and from my perspective. It might work, but I think it's better for you to be the authority figure. So, okay. All right, so we're actually going to do the other one here because I like this video. So let me get this going. Okay, so tell me your thoughts about that video. how does that incorporate ACT, emotion coaching, attuning? Go ahead, and then over here.
I was just gonna say, I love the interruption, because that's reality.
Mm-hmm.
5 kids at once.
Yeah.
But she kept it going, it worked.
Right. Good. Good.
What I noticed was it really wasn't that long. It was just a few minutes.
Yeah.
But if she had ignored it, he probably would have been screaming and flailing and causing more problems for a lot longer.
Right. Actually, the other video shows that. So, but yeah, there's 2 videos. This comes from a preschool training program about how to use emotion coaching in the preschool system. One shows what not to do. This one shows what to do. And so, yeah, the other one, the tantrum goes a lot longer and more explosive, a lot more violent. Whereas this one, she just stayed there, connected with him, was physically close to him, made sure that he knew that she was actually there, present with him. So, okay, any other thoughts about this and how it relates to emotion coaching? Like, did you see the emotion coaching? Go ahead.
Yeah, she said that he was feeling angry.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that she came up with an alternative of the airplane.
Right.
She didn't catch on at first.
Yeah.
But then he's like, oh, and then you can see it fly, and then he's like, oh, yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, 2 things first. I think the bottom line is she communicated that she cares.
Yes.
And I really think that's probably what we're trying to do is,
Yeah.
you matter to me, what you're feeling matters to me. And she did that right up front, picked him up, put him on her level, and then she validated. It is hard to wait. Yeah, it seems like a long time. Yeah, and she's just validating
Right.
experience for him.
Yeah, very good. And it was his experience, right? So she said, I know it doesn't seem like a long time, but that's because you were enjoying it. So she was making sure that he heard that she valued his experience.
What is the guidance as far as like she was physically moving him, like, and he was, I don't know, he was out of control in that situation?
So obviously that's different for different situations. It's hard to do that depending on where you're at. With my kids, I pick them up and I hold them. With clients, depending on the comfort level that I have with the parents and the family, I might pat their back. I have one really awesome kid that has a lot of explosive behaviors, but he really likes physical touch, and so if I were to try to emotion coach without physical touch, it wouldn't work. So I just have to touch his back and rub it a little bit, and as soon as he knows that I'm attuning to him, he'll calm right down, we'll get back to playing, and he's fine. And the parents are okay with that. They see, and I record a lot of my sessions so that parents can see, this is what I'm doing with your child, so that way, if you want to do it at home, you can do this as well. So, but that particular child I really like because he's one of the examples that really requires physical touch. So yeah, that's a good question. It all depends on where you're at and what situation you're in. So, the other thing I totally forgot to mention, which came up in my mind as I watched this video, is Gottman talks about how above 100 beats per minute, we can't logically process anymore. So if your child is in that experience, it's not worthwhile, it's not worth your time or their time to try to tell them logically what they should be doing. So that's why we need to emotion coach and connect first, because then that brings their heart rate down, gets them back to regulation, and then they can logically process. So, and that comes from Daniel Siegel's work as well as John Gottman's work. So yeah, that's a really important piece of helping them learn how to deal with their emotions. So, okay, so this is a video that I want you to kind of watch. It's a wrap-up video. It's going to demonstrate what differentiation and integration means. So pay attention to that. Find out where the coaching is, the attunement is, and the limit setting is, okay? And then we'll talk about that in a sec. Hopefully the audio wasn't so good, so I'm hoping that it comes through better.
Basses, I want you
Right here is differentiation.
Okay, on three. 1, 2, 3.
No integration whatsoever. That's all differentiation.
Slide right in here. That's a powerful instrument. I think it's probably a good idea if we bring you down out of that. Everybody wants to be close to God. I'm just not sure you can do it vocally. Okay, so I think you just sing an octave below what you've been singing. And Sister Mary Robert, could you go down here, please? Yeah, come on over. I noticed that you're moving your mouth, but nothing's coming out. So I'd like to just hear you by yourself, if you don't mind. Sister Alma, could you give me an A, please? Alma. Check your battery. Give me an A, please. Okay. Try this. Close your eyes. Visualize yourself in a room full of people, lots of silverware, people dropping stuff, talking loud, drunk, swimming with trays. Your voice has to carry over the din. You have to get up over all of that. So you heard in the back of the room where I'm sitting. Listen, straining to hear. Okay? Keep that in your mind when you do this. Listen. We call that an A with an attitude. That's what you need. You have to put attitude in what you're saying. You have to think about what you're singing. It's not just quacking. This is rejoicing. You are singing to the Lord. Let's review those notes again and see if we can put it together. Sister. Basses, altos, sopranos. On three. 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness, we actually sang. Okay, we sang a chord for 2 seconds. Next thing you have to learn how to do is listen to each other. That's a big key, big key. You must listen to each other if you're going to be a group.
I've got to go see. Okay. All right. Are you around? Yeah. Okay. I'll email you. Okay. Thanks. So that end part was integration with differentiation. They all had their individual parts, but they integrated it to make a whole. That's what we want to do with our families. That's what we want to do with the kids. If we can attune to them, then we are integrating and differentiating at the same time. So who caught the coaching? Where was the coaching at in that video? Where was she coaching them? Okay, the notes. She was also reorganizing them. They were scattered all over the place, weren't in the right place with each other, so they had to go to certain places. What about the limit setting? What was she doing with limit setting? Go ahead.
With the loudness of that.
Yes.
That she was like, okay, like bring it down, we can't go quite that loud. And
Mm-hmm.
the other one, she was like, okay, bring it up, like
Right,
evening
right.
out the volume.
Yes, exactly. So Daniel Siegel talks about how he does something similar to this with audience members, but I didn't want to intimidate very many people, so I found a clip that we could do this easily with. So this is what attunement is all about, is connecting with each other, listening to each other, and making sure that we're incorporating and differentiating and integrating with each other. So that's, again, where emotion coaching comes into play. We want to integrate with our child, integrate with our clients to make sure that they know that we are actually feeling them. So, all right. So what questions do you have? We've got about 15 minutes. So if there's no overall global questions, then you're free to go. I'll stay here for a little bit. But right here is where the handouts are. And all of the handouts right there are current. If I think of anything else to add, I'll put it up there. So that link will be active for the next year or so. So if you want clients to look at it or parents, there's a page specifically for parents. There's a page specifically for clinicians. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much for your role play. Yes.